Welcome back to No Limit Drag Racing 2.0 and another setup, this time for the Datsun 240Z or Nissan Fairlady Z. Now this thing was unfortunately nerfed quite heavily from the previous update where you were easily able to hit 5.5s, but I've still managed to get it doing consistent low 5.6s here on the most recent update 1.9.9. So make sure you stick around to the end of the video. I'm going to walk through my best run so far, and it's going to be very important you copy when I change gear. If you change gear at different times to I do, you won't really get anywhere near the best time possible, so it is vital you pay attention to that clip at the end and change gear at the same time as I do. But before we get into that, I'm just going to run through all the upgrades for you, point out some of the key ones, and then I'm going to go through the tuning setup and a couple areas you can adjust as well. This car can be a bit fiddly and it might not work exactly on your particular device, so I'll go through a few areas you can change and try and adjust yourself. So let's get right into the setup. Starting with the upgrades, and this is a max power build again, so in the engine section just fully upgrade everything to the best one possible, so you obviously have the most power. Then onto intake, fully upgraded intake, fully upgraded exhaust, and again I've gone with a turbo. I said in the last video, but the reason I use turbo instead of nitrous is simply if I'm running the car over and over again adjusting the setup, it's one less thing to do when you don't have to purge the nitrous, so I always tend to use the turbo. Then I've gone with hood exit exhaust. This doesn't actually make any difference to the performance, you can pick any of the exhausts there that you want. On to transmission, making sure this is on 6-speed of course, and then fully upgrading the clutch and the flywheel as well. Onto suspension, fully upgraded front and rear brakes, and then fully upgraded front and rear suspension. Same again here with the imports. The axle config, you can't upgrade it from this page, you have to upgrade it once we get onto the tuning section. So if yours is just showing the second upgrade for now, don't worry, you can just leave it like that and we'll adjust it when we get onto the tune. Onto the frame, fully upgrade the roll cage. This setup I have actually used the wheelie bar. You do clip it just about when the car launches. It does tend to wheelie quite a lot on this update, so you do need that installed. And then fully upgrading the weight reduction, weight transfer, and parachute again. You can put this on if you want to. I tend to leave it off, yet again, just because it's one less thing to do. You don't actually need it. It doesn't affect the performance, so you don't need to install the parachute. Then onto computer. Nitrous tuning you don't need to upgrade, seeing as we've not got nitrous installed, we just have the turbo. And then launch controller fully upgraded, same with fuel controller, timing controller and the boost controller. Finally onto the tyres here, the most important part, because if you adjust the height differently to I have, it's going to affect the gear ratios. So obviously rear wheel drive car, so we've gone max width on the rear and they're of a height of 24 I should say, so make sure you've got 24, 21 and the rim diameter of 13, and of course selecting the slick tyres for the rear. Then onto the front, you can only pick street compound, and I've gone with 24 on the height, 4 on the width and 16 on the diameter. So this is the most important section in the upgrades. You want to make sure it's exactly the same or it's going to affect the whole setup, so just double check you've got the tyres exactly the same as I do there. And that's all from the upgrades. Now we'll get on to the tune setup. On to tuning, and we always want to start off with computer. Reason being, limiter RPM, you can see that's set to 10,000 and you need to make sure it's set to that before you're able to adjust the transmission and the gear ratios. Then also in this section, launch control we've not got selected, so just make sure that box at the top is unchecked. Shift light RPM 9600, this is preference. It's kind of the midpoint of when you want to shift gear. For the earlier gears you're going to shift before then around 9200, 9400, and then later on you'll shift after. So it's kind of the midpoint of all of them. If you shift at 9600 every gear you will be a lot slower than the best time. So just make sure you pay close attention to my best run at the end of the video and just copy my shift points from that one if you want the best time. Then delay box, that's set to 0.033. That is for the pro tree and reacting to the amber light. If you just want to react to green, set that to 0. Or if you want a tutorial on setting up the delay box yourself, I'll link that in the top corner of the video. Onto fuel rate and timing. Key thing here is you can see it says perfect tune installed in the top right hand corner. You can't copy my numbers for these, they're unique to your particular car on your device. So you're going to need to spend 300 gold for each to install it yourself. Or the best thing to do is buy the strip car version of the car. It costs $150,000, but it will come with both of these installed, so you won't need to spend any gold. And then onto boost at the end here, just making sure it's 30 psi across the board there. Onto transmission, I've gone first gear of 2.8, then 2.07, 162, 131, 108, 089, and a final drive of 293. Now this is probably the best place to start if it's not quite working on your particular device and you want to adjust first gear. So if you find the car's spinning the wheels a bit too much and you're just launching, spinning the wheels, getting no traction, you want to reduce that first gear number. That's going to make the gear a bit longer and should help the car grip up. If the opposite's happening, if you find it's bogging down, you're not spinning the wheels at all, you want to increase that number. That's going to make the first gear shorter and it should help promote a bit of wheel spin. But I just try my numbers to start with and then work from there. Graph scale, people always mention this, but I'll say it again, makes no difference to the performance. It's just you can see all the gear ratios properly, so don't worry about that one. On to suspension, 0.15 on the front and 0.15 on the rear. Stiffness, this is vital on this car. Tiny adjustments do make a big difference. So I've gone with 34,000 on the front and 67,000 on the rear. This is the other section I'd look at adjusting if it's not working on your particular phone. So if you find the car's wheeling a bit too much at the start and just launching straight onto the wheelie bar, I'd reduce that first front suspension value. Maybe try 33 and then give it another go and see what happens. If the opposite's happening, if you find you're launching and the front wheels are staying planted on the ground, it's not wheeling at all, then do the opposite. Increase that value, make it a bit stiffer, and then try from there. But same as the gear ratios, just try my numbers to start with, and then if it's not quite working, you can work on those two sections I've shown you. Onto bump, this is where you can upgrade the axle config. You're going to see in the top right hand corner of the screen, so just make sure you apply that now. You couldn't do that in the upgrade section as I said previously. Then you just want 7,000 on the front bump and 1,000 on the rear bump. Rebound, we've gone 7,000 on the front and 7,000 on the rear. Extension, this doesn't really affect performance. You can set it to whatever you want, but I've just set it to, well, so the tyres fill the arches really. So I've just gone with 0.48 on the front and minus 0.2 on the rear. Same thing with camber. This doesn't affect the performance. It should really, because if you put loads of camber on, it will reduce the contact patch of the ground in real life, but in the game for some reason you can adjust it to whatever you want. So that's complete preference. You can copy my numbers there if you want, or just set that to whatever you feel like. On to wheelie bar, which we do have installed on this setup. So I've got minus 0.5 on the length and 0.6 on the height. Weight, same kind of thing with most rear-wheel drive cars in this game. You want the weight quite far forward. It's gone with 0.67 on the front back CFG position, and then 0.05 on the heights. Computer we've already been through, and nitrous we of course don't have installed. So make sure you double check everything there that is set the same as my one, and then you can work on those two areas I told you to adjust if it's not quite working for your particular phone. And now we'll get on to my best run so far. Now for my best run so far, the key thing here is the shift points. So you want to change around 9,200 RPM first to second, then a bit later and a bit later for each gear thereafter. So just maybe watch it 2-3 times, try and nail down those shift points. They are the same as me. Then you should be able to get pretty much the same times, low 5.6s. So the best one I've got so far here, a 5.625 with a 60 foot of 0.783, which is still quite quick for a rear-wheel drive car. So that's all from me. Thanks for watching. Please leave a like down below if you found this helpful, and I'll see you next time.